Hi everyone, it's Tom from Heritage Blades here. I'm just in my workshop at the moment, a really windy day today, so apologies for the noise of the wind and a very squeaky door behind me, as well as, well, dog kennels, so you might hear the occasional howl as well at the same time. I'm just working on a 13th to 15th century medieval knife. This is a replica of one from the Queen Hithe collection, which is held by the Worshipful Company of Cutlers. That's a collection of cutlery from the medieval period onwards that has been found by mudlarkers on the River Thames. So I'm just working on this knife. It's one that I've wanted to make for a good while, but the real reason why I thought I'd make a quick little video is that it has tube rivets. Now, tube rivets are what's holding on the scale of the handle, and as the name suggests, tube rivets are rivets which are, well, tubes. So we're just working with this little 3mm section of tube here, and I've had people ask before about fitting them to try and produce quite a nice even finish on them as we go. So I thought I would just show that as I go along. So I've got my little section of tube there. I like to do this wonderfully imprecise. I don't like to pre-cut them, measure out widths and go for it. I like to do a lot of it by eye and just fit it as I go. So I'm going to work near the end here, and the method I choose is simply, once I've got a section that's nice and paired up, work on pushing it through the handle until it is just level with the other side. At this point, I know that at least for the vast majority of it, that rivet is going all the way through, and then this is the point where I'll actually cut my rivet off. There are equations. Usually if you're doming a rivet, you would go 1.5 times the thickness, the diameter of the material. So you know, we talk about maybe cutting at 4.5mm. As I say, I like to do things a bit wonderfully imprecise with this, so I just am eyeballing it. It's probably about there, why not? And all I'm doing is just giving it a quick cut with a file, and trying to keep everything as even as I can, because when we come to peening it over, if it's not nice and level, part of it will fold, will extend further than the other. So quick file just to level everything else out there. And one of the reasons I like to actually do this in a fairly, as I said, imprecise way is because when you look at a lot of the medieval knives, or a lot of cutlery throughout history, you'll notice that rivet holes aren't central. Things are going off on weird angles at times. They themselves, the cutlers themselves and the knife makers, were making mistakes, or well, very much eyeballing a lot of the measurements. So those, sometimes if you do it all a little bit too precise, it can seem like it's a really machined knife. Basically, it really looks like it's made in a modern way. That's not an excuse for making you know, for shoddy work. It's just a case of saying sometimes rivets are a little off center, sometimes they curve off to a different direction. I really like that sort of element that it brings to it with handmade items in this respect. Now, I've pushed that rivet through. We've got about the same amount of that rivet protruding on each side. Now, it would be tempting to get the hammer and just go hell for leather, peening it over, but actually I'm going to get a center punch. I've actually got two. One is wider than the other, so I'm starting off with my center punch here. I'm putting it into the rivet and just lightly giving it a few taps, turn over and repeat on the other side. And what I'm trying to do is I'm basically pushing the tube rivet out at the top on each side. Instead of mushrooming it over where it could fold in on itself, I'm trying to make sure it pushes out equally in all directions. And this one's actually going quite lovely. A few taps on that. Once I'm getting to a point, I switch to a wider one, and now we're really going for pushing that material that has protruded out quite wide. I say this is the way I do it, doesn't mean it's the right way, it's just the way I do it and it works for me. So whatever works for you is good as well, if you don't do it exactly this way. Once I've reached quite a nice flare on the tubes either side, switch to a little ball peen hammer and I just encourage the last bits of it just to curve over, working around the rivet. I'm not going straight in the middle, I'm working around it. I'm also looking at how the metal is moving with regards to the hammer. I'm not just hitting and assuming it will work. I'm making sure I'm hitting in directions or hitting on points that I know will push the metal in certain directions. And you might find that some of your rivet is sitting a little proud of the hole that's there, but that's okay. This isn't the end. We're going to file this all back, make sure everything's nice and smooth. But there we have our little, well, don't know if you can see it in the decent light here, nice little rivet on the end there. We've got a few more to do on this, and actually we have to do a forged rivet, or a curved piece of sheet there instead of an actual tube. And we know that both were in existence for medieval knives. We have solid tube rivets. We also have ones where it is obviously a piece of brass or bronze that has been formed around, and makes quite a nice effect, I think. So there you go, a little crash course on working for tube rivets.